I think we have a little neighborly competition going on here. What do you think? Good morning. What a pleasure to be with all of you. Thank you very, very much for coming out. First to Pat Barrett, congratulations, order on this new convention center. It came in on time, on budget. It's working. Isn't it beautiful? And really is a pleasure to be here. It's going to do a lot of great things for the entire region, and congratulations for getting it done. And Pat Barrett, who's doing a great job as chairman of order. Let's give him a round of applause. Saranac Lake Mayor Clyde Rabideau, longtime friend. Supervisor Roby Politi, and I'm not taking sides, guys. Let's give him a round of applause. You have the great, brand spanking new, out-of-the-box DEC Commissioner Joe Martens. Pleasure to be with you. And so many friends and so many elected officials. The district attorneys are here. Bill, Derek, and Christy, good to be with you. And all of you. Thank you very, very much for coming out. It really is my pleasure to be here. That's an expression that's used often, but it really is my pleasure to be here. I hope you appreciate the special place that you have, the special place that you live. I've been coming up for 30 years, and I've brought family members. I bring my kids. It just really is special. I don't even have the words. There's something about the energy. There's something about the light. There's something about the people. It's renewing. It's refreshing. Whenever I get a chance, and I'm tired of being governor for a day, I play a little hooky, and I run up from Albany, and I spend some time, and it really is renewing. And I do just now. It's great to play hooky until you run into, in front of a pizzeria, I run into Clyde Rabideau. I knew that was it. But it's a pleasure to be back. And as you heard, I've been governor for about 5 months. But they were 5 very long months, I want you to know. I was at an event with my brother Chris, who's the baby of the family. He's a little bit of a wise guy. And a woman came up who we hadn't seen in a while, and she said hello to Chris, and she said hello to me. And she said, you know, you look more distinguished than the last time I saw you. I looked at Chris. I said, yeah, see, I'm distinguished. She didn't say you were distinguished. I'm distinguished. He said, yeah, distinguished means you have more gray hair than the last time I saw you. And unfortunately, she was right. It's been a long 5 months, but we've actually gotten a lot of good things done over the past 5 months. And we have made progress, and we're moving forward. And you can feel it. You can feel the momentum has changed. And we're now getting down to the end of the legislative session, 5 weeks or so to go. And my point to the legislature is there's more to do. And this presentation to you is about what else we're trying to get done in these next few weeks, which I think will make a significant difference in the state of New York, and it's going to happen, as you heard, if you make it happen. And that's what today is all about. I was elected for 3 goals, which is first to get the economy running, jobs, 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 to clean up Albany, to give you a government that you can trust and a government that you respect, and to return New York to the legacy of social progress. Phase 1 has been completed. We're off to a good start with the state budget. This was a much different experience than the past. The budget was honest. There were no gimmicks in it. It was balanced, and it was on time. Government actually performed. What we did in this year's budget was we closed a $10 billion deficit, and we did it without raising taxes and without borrowing. We ended what was called the automatic inflators in the budget. What the state budget had by law were automatic inflators where the main programs, education, Medicaid, would go up 14% every year. You wonder why the state always had a deficit, why the state was always out of money, because it was spending by law 14% more per year. You can't keep up with that. Nothing was going up at 14%. That's ended. We also introduced performance funding to state government, so it's not just how much we spend, but what we actually get for the people of the state. And we began to focus on the economy with the Recharge New York Jobs Program because it's all about job production. But there is more to be done. And we've made a good start, but it's only a start. And there's more to be done on reforming Albany, and that brings us to phase 2. On the first goal, which is to get the economy running again, we started by getting taxes under control on the state side, the state spending, and we did that with no new taxes on the state budget. But now we must look to local governments and the taxation that comes from local governments. And New York's hidden tax, which is the property tax, which is affecting people all across this state from one end to the other. We have some of the highest property taxes in the nation. When you look at the property taxes all across the country, the top 15 highest tax counties are all in the state of New York. In terms of raw dollars, we have counties that spend more than any other county. Nassau, Westchester, Rockland are in the top 5. Every county in the state of New York, every county, is in the top 20% nationwide of the highest property tax counties. The average property tax bill is $1,900. The average in the state of New York is $3,700, 96% higher. When you look at how costs are going up in New York, rate of inflation 2.9%. Rate of inflation is the basic index that things are going up, 2.9. At the same time, look at the way government costs are going up. Fire district 7%, school district 7.5%. That is unsustainable to have that rate of increase in government spending. Very simple truth is that New York has no economic future as the tax capital of the nation. Businesses will leave and people will leave. We know that because we're experiencing it. There was a public opinion poll done last week that said 36% of those who are 30 years and older plan to leave the state in the next 5 years because it's too expensive. 36% of the young people. 26% of all people say they plan to move in 5 years because they can't afford to live here anymore. And that's the problem that we have to address, and that's at the heart of all of this. People think that the property tax burden is just a residential burden that you paid on your home. It's also the largest tax that business pays in the state. Corporate income tax for the state is $3 billion. Property taxes are $16 billion, 5 times what businesses pay in the property tax. So what is the answer? The answer is to cap the increase of property taxes once and for all. I have a proposal. I want the legislature to act, and the proposal would cap the increase of property taxes, not at the 7% that they're going up, or the 6 or the 5, 2%, or the rate of inflation, whatever is less per year. 2%. It would impose fiscal discipline on local governments, because without fiscal disciplines, they'll raise the taxes as high as they can. 2% property tax cap, or the rate of inflation, or a vote of 60% of the people. In other words, school district has a budget. The school district budget would be capped at a 2% increase, or they have to win the election by 60%. Why 60%? Why not 50%? 50% normally wins. Because in this case, I want the odds in the favor of the taxpayer. Because the deck has been stacked against the taxpayers for too long. This is not a new idea. Other states have done it. The state of Massachusetts has done it. Massachusetts used to be called Taxachusetts. I don't know if you're old enough to remember. But in 1980, they put in, it was the second most taxed state in the nation, and they put in a tax cap. Today, Massachusetts is number 23. It is the imposition of fiscal discipline that this state needs, and it also needs a new attitude about spending. It's not how much you spend. It's what you achieve. Performance matters and results matter. In government, all the conversation is, well, if we spend more, we're going to get more. No. New York spends more in education than any state in the nation. More per pupil than any state in the nation. We're number 34 in terms of results. It's not just the spending. It's how you spend the money. We know that in our own lives and our own businesses. Government has to understand that also. Again, looking back at the state of Massachusetts, New York spends 28% more per student. But New York is 40th in graduation rates. Massachusetts is 14. Massachusetts is first in test scores, and we're number 25. We have to start to ask, what are we getting out of these programs? What are the results? And are we accomplishing what we set out to accomplish? The goal was not to build a great school bureaucracy. The goal was to educate students. And we have to start focusing on the goal and not just the spending. The story of education spending, since 1996, look at this. Public school enrollment has gone down. Why? Because as a matter of demographics, there are fewer school-aged children. So the number of pupils has gone down 4%. The spending has gone up 120%. The number of teachers has gone up 10%. And the number of supervisors has gone up 34%. How can that be? How can you be adding more supervisors when you have fewer students and the number of teachers is only going up 10%? What you did was you built a bureaucracy. You built the management. You bloated the front office. It's not about the kids. It's not about the students. It's not about more teachers in the classroom. It's not about more computers for kids and more books. It's about more jobs and more bureaucracy and more management, and that's what we can't afford anymore, and that's what has to stop. At the same time, we also need something called mandate relief, where the state imposes mandates on local governments and tells them what to do, but doesn't give them the money to do it. We also need to reform the state pension system because we just can't afford to pay the public pensions the way we are now spending them. They are at an unsustainable rate. When you look at the cost of increase in the pension program, 98, 99, we paid $1.3 billion in pensions. 2013, 2014, that's going to $6 billion. It's a 476% increase. It's the state cost. It's on local governments. Nobody can afford it. We have to reform the pension program, and we have to do that this year. Step two is we have to clean up Albany, and we need ethics reform. There's been a long line of disgraced politicians in Albany. I spent 4 years as Attorney General doing a lot of the cases. There was actually a sentencing today in someone who was involved in a corruption case in the New York State Comptroller's office that I did for many, many years. I did the individual cases. I now want to change the law and change the system to stop the corruption from happening in the first place. You can always prosecute people for wrongdoing. It's better and more effective to stop the wrongdoing in the first place by changing the rules. And we need a system in Albany that will allow the Albany government to restore faith with the people. There's been a long line of scandals. It's gone on for a long time, and it has to stop now. The situation is that we have a part-time legislature in Albany. That's in the Constitution. The assemblymen, the senators, work as assemblymen and senators part-time, and part-time they have their own business. Many of them are lawyers. They can be businessmen. And they do both jobs. There is a potential, as we've seen time and time again, for a conflict in these situations between who they represent in their private capacity as a lawyer and their representation of the public. My ethics reform says, disclose who you represent, disclose when there might be a conflict, let the people know who you're representing and what you're representing them on. And my bill says, disclose to the public private clients who you represent before the state government, and disclose how much they pay you for that service. They are refusing to answer. And my point is, when you refuse to answer that question, you just did answer that question. The legislature says we don't need a new law and we don't need to disclose. We can police ourselves. And there's a legislative ethics committee that has been in existence since 2007. The Legislative Ethics Committee has never taken a real action since 2007. And since 2007, a long line of senators and assemblymen have been indicted, have been convicted, and there hasn't been a peep from the Legislative Ethics Committee. Self-policing is an oxymoron. By definition, there's no such concept as self-policing. We need an independent monitor to restore faith so people know that that is a government that works for them in Albany, and you deserve that, and you're going to get it. And when it comes to New York and social progress, the government of New York was not just a government from New York. In many ways, what we did here in New York served as a model for the nation. When you look at the progressive movements in this nation's history, many of them started right here in New York. The environmental movement started on the Storm King controversy in the Hudson Valley next to the Hudson River. And it birthed an environmental movement in this state that spread all across the country. The women's rights movement started right here in New York, Seneca Falls. Civil rights movement, NAACP, started right here in New York. Workers' rights movement started right here after the Triangle Factory fire. We've birthed progressive movements. We've seen these problems first. We've seen these issues first. We resolved them first, and other states learned from us. That's one of the legacies of New York. There is a civil rights issue that is pressing today as we speak, and that is the issue of marriage equality. At one time, not too long ago, some states in this nation said it was illegal for blacks and whites to marry each other. It took the U.S. Supreme Court to rule that states couldn't ban interracial marriage. That was only 1968. 1968 was not that long ago. I drive a car from 1968. And when you think that it was only 1968 that some states said black people and white people can't marry, social progress is evolutionary. This issue of marriage equality, 5, 10 years from now, we will look back and we will say we can't believe that there were states that didn't allow gay people to marry just because they were gay. Other states have already passed marriage equality: Massachusetts, Connecticut, Iowa, Vermont, New Hampshire. It's time. New York passed it, and New York should do it now. Let's catch up in terms of progressive policies and pass marriage equality this session. To recap the agenda, it's about getting the economy running, giving you a government that you can trust, and returning New York to the legacy of social progress, and now is the time to do it. June 20th is the day that the legislature ends. June 20th is D-Day. My message to you is very simple. Tell your legislators, pass these bills or don't come home. And let me say in closing, there's always a simple truth to the matter. There's apparently complex matters, but I believe there's always a simple truth to it. I was on the phone with one of my daughters the other night, and she started to explain to me a complicated matter. She's at school, and she had one set of friends who were enrolling in one set of courses, and she had told those friends that she was going to enroll in those courses, but then another friend enrolled in another course, and she starts to tell me the story, and then she gets frustrated telling me the story, and she said, well, you know, Dad, you wouldn't understand. It's too complicated, she said. Because she's 16, and I'm the simpleton father, you see. I can't handle complex. It has to be very simple for me. I have a simple job. I'm simple. But I said to her, you know, Mariah, I don't understand courses and friends and this friend and that friend, and you're 16, and I don't know that I want to understand. But I said, you know, put all of that aside. In life, no matter how apparently complicated the situation is, there's always a principle at play. There's always a right and a wrong, and there's always a truth to the situation. And sometimes you don't hear it from your mind. Sometimes you feel it in your heart or you feel it in your gut, but there's always a truth and a principle, and the point is to identify that principle. And we're talking about Albany and legislators and all this. This is simpler than it actually appears. The ethics issue is just about trust. That's all this comes down to. That you've seen a state government in Albany year after year that has embarrassed you, that has disgraced you. Politicians came before you and said, trust me, and you did, and they broke your heart. And that your sense is that this government in Albany isn't representing you, and the government is limited by that level of trust. Any relationship in life is only as good as the extension of trust, and the people of this state don't trust their state government. And until that state government reforms and puts a system in place, they're not going to have that trust. And we're not saying that all the legislators are bad legislators. Most of the legislators are good legislators. It's the exception. It's the one bad apple. But you need a system that's going to stop that. So it's not recurring time after time after time. And we want this ethics reform so we restore trust, so you feel good about the government and you know it represents you. That's what ethics is all about. Just the concept of trust. And you elect this government and you deserve the right to trust this government. And that's what this is about. Property tax cap is about respect. It is about respect. It is about respect for the people of this state. And it's about respect for the taxpayer. And it's about respect for the taxpayer's dollar. The property tax cap says government can't spend more than 2%. That you can't spend 5, 6, 7%. You can't keep raising taxes and going to the people of the state and expect them to pay. Where are the people of the state supposed to get 7% more every year? What in their life is going up 7%? Is their income going up 7%? Is their home worth 7% more than last year? Is their savings account going up 7% more? Well, then where does government think they're going to get the money? And when you keep sending them a bill year after year after year that says 7%, 8%, 9%, don't be surprised when people say, I've had enough, I'm getting on a plane, I'm leaving, because I can't afford to live in this state anymore. Respect the taxpayer and go through the same exercise that every taxpayer in this state has gone through. Find the efficiency, find the effectiveness, find out how to do it for less money. This agenda is not my agenda. It's not mine. I got this agenda from you. I got this agenda from the people of the state of New York, from traveling from one end to the other, representing people in this state, talking to people in this state, and that's where I got this agenda. And this legislature should listen to the people and not the lobbyists and pass this agenda, and let's move this state forward. This is also a very simple conflict because in many ways it is a battle for control of the government. Will the government respond to the people of this state, the citizens of this state, or the lobbyists who roam the hallways in Albany? It's about the people versus the politicians. And who's going to win? Well, are we going to put the people first? That is up to you. It depends on what you do. And that's why I'm here today. Because democracy works. But the premise of democracy is that the people speak and the people act. Politicians respond to the people. They do. Because if they don't respond to the people, they're not politicians for long. It's a concept of Darwin and evolution. Politicians who don't hear the people are not politicians for long. But you have to act, and you have to speak. Because there is a competition going on, and you don't see it every day. You have a Capitol building in Albany filled with lobbyists, and filled with campaign donors, and filled with powerful corporations. And they're talking to those politicians, and they're influencing those politicians, and they're making donations to their politicians. And the politicians have to make decisions. And if they don't hear from the people, and if the people don't speak and the people don't act, well, then sometimes they're swayed by the lobbyists in Albany. It is up to you to act. And I am telling you this, we have had a great 5 months. And we are moving in a way we haven't moved in years. And you can feel it. We are on a new direction and a new trajectory. And we can make a real difference. And we can make a difference now. We can have a new New York. And it is so time that we did it. Because I am tired of talking to people around this state and talking about the problems and not talking about the solutions. I'm tired of talking about the good old days and what we used to do rather than what we're going to do. I'm tired of having people come up to me and saying, you know what, there's no future here. The young people are leaving. The businesses are leaving. The jobs are leaving. I spent 8 years in Washington. I worked in every state in this country. Literally. I was Secretary of Housing and Urban Development during the Clinton administration. I worked in every state, over 600 cities. There is no state that has what we have in New York. No state has our assets. No state has our geography, our history, our diversity, our healthcare institutions, our academic institutions, our workforce. No other state has the Adirondack Park. Nobody has what we have. What we haven't had is a government as good as the people of this state. And that's what this is all about. Making that government work to lead this state forward so this state is the Empire State once again. If you do what you have to do, we're going to make it a reality this year. Thank you and God bless you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the 56th governor of the state of New York. Thank you very much for coming, everybody.